What's up, everyone, and welcome to ClearTalk. So, in today's video, we are going to be talking about, uh, we're going to be talking about the Trump interview at the NABJ, the National Association of Black Journalists. Um, that happened today, and let's just say that it did not go very well for him. It was pretty rough. Uh, so we're going to be going over it. I'm going to talk about some different spots. The whole interview was like 36 minutes. It was actually about 34 minutes or so. But um, so I'm not going to go over the whole entire thing. I'm going to try to skip around to a couple of parts that were very, I guess, controversial to some degree, and talk about it and what I think. So, if you if you like this content and stuff, um, consider subscribing, like, share, all that good stuff, and to help grow this community. And so, without further ado, let's get to it. Um, I've been trying to like give y'all some different kind of content, instead of the same things over and over and over again. But when stuff that has to do with like the election, or the candidates or something like that, with going on with overseas, Israel, and all that kind of stuff, like it's just like I can't help but come back and like talk about it. And when it's spitfiring, like almost every day, something new coming out. So I apologize if sometimes it feels like things are just getting like repetitive or like the same, like within the same lane. Um, but it's kind of the way it is right now with uh, where we are right now with all this stuff going on. So, but I will try to continue to put some few extra little things in here and there to talk about when I can. But anyways, so here we are. Um, so yes, the NABJ had a conference today. They invited, so full disclosure, they invited Trump and Kamala. I think they had previously, the idea or the plan was to have Trump and Biden, and of course Biden, dropped out, and so they tried to approach Kamala and her campaign, but she, because of logistics and or plans or whatever that she already had set up for today, I think in Texas, a reverend's funeral or something. I'm assuming it was a pretty popular reverend or something. Um, she was attending and could not make this conference. So, and she was trying to set up maybe with like a Zoom or something like that, do some type of video thing at the same time, but they didn't want that. Like they first declined for that. Um, they were trying to get some kind of surrogate or something like Oprah or somebody else. But anyways, but that wasn't really lining up. They weren't really wanting to go for that. Um, and that seems a little odd for me, anyways, because why would you have Trump there and then some kind of surrogate? That doesn't really make much sense to me. It would have been obviously make more sense for her to be there. But they didn't want to do the Zoom thing, so, or they weren't wanting her to do that. I think it seems like there's some reporting that they came back after the fact, and saying that they, or after these plans were like set in stone with Trump, that they came back to her and apparently offered at a later date to do, another appearance or even Zoom if she had to. So they kind of waived on that for another possibility, which Trump brings up, but he kind of brings it up in a disingenuous way. Um, but anyways, so we have Trump. He agreed to come. He does make a big deal about that. Like I said, he talks about it kind of disingenuously, but uh, and it just, well, let's just get to it. So first off, you have this lady here. She is with ABC. She's kind of seems like the main moderator to some degree. Her name is Rachel Scott from ABC News. The one in the middle is I hope I don't mess this up. Kadia, either Goba or Gaba or something like that. She's from Semaphore. Not exactly sure who that is. And then the lady all the way to the right side here on the screen is Harris Faulkner from Fox News. So we do have kind of a mixed group here, and also even with the audience, it appears that there was uh, what seemed to be some type of mixture of opinions to some degree at least, um, in the audience as well, because you do at times hear some cheers at first, like a little bit of cheer, even some uh, in light booing maybe at some points. There was some different reactions to certain things that he said, gasps and things like that. Seemed laughing, but I don't know to for what extent or how uh, you know what exactly the laughing was towards. But anyways, so she's first gonna. I think I'm gonna try to skip over this part, but she's just sort of introducing uh, what they what they are
Test,
and
test,
stuff.
test. Q&A, either in person or virtually in September. As journalists, we use opportunities like these.
So right here's where they're introducing them.
Hi, Mr. Trump. Rachel Scott, BBC. Thank you.
All right. And right off the bat, it gets very, very touchy. Um, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Mr. President, we so appreciate you giving us an hour of your time.
And notice right there, I want to go ahead and stop and notice that she does say, Mr. President, we want to thank you for giving you an hour of your, giving us an hour of your time. So she does make kind of an introduction, and you'll see why I pointed that out in a minute.
I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, sir. A lot of people did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not born in the United States, which is not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabid to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
All right, so like right off the bat, she is hitting him hard. Like this is a tough, right out the gate kind of question. And you could argue maybe it was somewhat aggressive, although I feel like she brought it about in a decent way. I don't feel like she was like intentionally trying to make it sound like she was attacking or anything. But anyways, um, but it is a hard question. She's sitting here throwing out actual facts about things that he has said, and those were straight up facts. And matter of fact, there's other instances that she could have brought up that she didn't. Those are more recent ones, like within the past, well, past 8 years or so since he was president and whatever. So this is in more recent history. It's not like going back into some kind of crazy history of his or something years ago. Um, they are true, simple as that. And she's just basically saying, hey, these are the things that you have said, you know, and you're here to talk about and engage with the black community, or that's what you're a part. Every candidate wants to touch with every community, but in this particular, we're talking about the black community, and this is a place of black journalists. Um, so you know how why is how are you going to explain these kinds of things and want you know uh, black people to vote for you? Simple as that. So this is his response.
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question so, in such a horrible manner. First question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC?
Don't even say hello or how are you, but she did give a greeting. She thanked him for being there, and he's trying to act like she just immediately went to being rude or something like that, which for me, I didn't even see the question as rude. It was just straight up facts. I mean, if facts are rude to you, I don't really, I mean, and the thing is he, for the most part, he doesn't get hit with something like that. He just doesn't. He doesn't do very many major interviews with people that hit him with a question like that. So, but he immediately gets defensive.
Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And
and quite frankly, the fake news thing is old. The fake news thing is like so 5 6 years ago. Like it's ridiculous at this point. Like the whole, even and he still does this after all this time. Still in all his rallies, he points out fake news, all those people out there, fake news, fake news, fake news. It works for his base members, but that's all it works for. And I don't even I even think it annoys some of that. So it's really just it's the type of thing that he really needs to let go, like the 2020 election stuff. But either way,
I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the black population of this country. I've done so much for the black population of this country, including employment, including opportunity zones with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, which is one of the greatest programs ever for black workers and black entrepreneurs. I've done so much, and and I say this, historically black colleges and universities were out of money. They were stone cold broke, and I saved them, and I gave them long-term financing, and nobody else was doing it. I think it's a very rude introduction. I don't know exactly.
and if he had that little bit right there where he talked about his so-called things that he's done for the black community, if he would have just did that, if he would have just said that and that only, this probably wouldn't have been a big deal. Yeah, you would have people probably scrutinize a little bit, about the those arguments, and what did he really do that much, or or it was just this or that or whatever. It wasn't that much of a whatever. Like, you could make an argument within that, but if he had just said that, it probably would have been okay. But he just goes off the rails on front and back side of those comments on this lady, which doesn't really sit well at all with the whole, and it's something that he continues to do throughout the entire interview. He attacks Miss Rachel over and over again, and it's just to the point that it's, by the end of it, it's just like exhaustingly pathetic, really. I mean, if he had just left it at that, like even if he had just said what he said here, and if just say it's an excuse what he's how he's approaching this answer, and acting like she was just completely rude. If he had then just left it alone and not said anything else, maybe even then he could have saved the rest of the interview. But the way he continuously attacked, and I'll show you.
Why you would do something like that. And let me go a step further. I was invited here, and I was told my opponent, whether it was Biden or Kamala, I was told my opponent was going to be here. It turned out my opponent isn't here. You invited me under false pretense. And then you said, you can't do it with Zoom. Well, you know, where's Zoom? She's going to do it with Zoom, and she's not coming. And then you were half an hour late. Just so we understand, I have too much respect for you to be late. They couldn't get their equipment working, or something was
Mr. President,
wrong.
I would love
I think
if you
it's
can
a
answer the
very
question on
nasty
your
question.
rhetoric.
Wow.
And that for me is hilarious, because as many times there's been multiple occasions where he himself has been late on his own rallies, having Trump people, the MAGAs, you know, it was just like a couple weeks back or so, or whatever, or maybe it was a little bit further back than that. But there was one rally in like Florida, where he was like over 2 hours late. It was like 100 degrees outside. Heat index was ridiculous, and he had them wait for like over 2 hours before he got on stage from the time that he was supposed to be there. So the hypocrisy here of him making a big deal of them having technical issues with the mics for apparently, I guess, around 30 minutes, that he was held up. It's like he didn't have a problem when he's holding up people, but when he's held up, that's a problem, and he's trying to make it out to be a big deal. So and then, like I said, the whole issue where he acts like he was under false pretenses or whatnot. He was invited, she was invited, she declined. It's not false pretense. She just didn't come. Even if you just want to leave it at that. He's just being straight up. In my opinion, he's the one being rude right here. And this is a continue, like, this set the stage for the rest of the interview.
I have answered the question. I have been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln. That's my answer.
Better than President Johnson, who signed the Voting Rights Act.
And for you to start off a question and answer period,
that's a ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous claim. There's nothing that needs to be even said about that. That's a ridiculous claim.
Especially when you're 35 minutes late because you couldn't get your equipment to work in such a hostile manner. I think it's a disgrace.
Let me just ask a follow-up, sir, and then we'll move on to other questions here. Some of your own supporters, including Republicans on Capitol Hill, have labeled Vice President Kamala Harris, who is the first black and Asian American woman to serve as vice president and be on a major party ticket, as a DEI hire. Is that acceptable language to you? And will you tell those Republicans and those supporters to stop it?
How do you define DEI? Go ahead. How do you define
diversity, equity, inclusion?
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Is that what your definition?
That is
give me a
literally
definition
the words
then. Would you give me a definition
DEI.
of that? Give me a definition.
Sir, I'm asking you a question,
No,
a
you
very
have to
direct
define
question.
it. Define it for me, if you would.
I just defined it, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a black woman?
Well, I can say no. I think it's maybe a little bit different. So
you see the aggression going here. You know, he's done upset her now. She's coming back at him, and honestly, keeping a bit of rapport. I mean, like, you know, a bit of herself repressed, because I mean, she could have easily blown up here, but she, you know, kept her cool, ignored the fact that he didn't really even answer the question she asked in the first place, and went on to another question, which, I mean, for me, I would have kept pressing him on it, but they had to do this quite a few times because he wasn't actually answering the question. But they also had a limited amount of time, and they were trying to make sure they could get as many questions in as possible. So it was just kind of a really bad thing all around, because, you know, as much as they probably wanted to press him to answer the questions, because he wasn't actually answering the questions. I mean, but anyway. But this answer here that he gives is the next big thing.
So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much, and she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She has always
But you know
identified
what?
as a black
I
woman. She went to a
respect either
historically black
one.
college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person.
Just to be clear, sir, do
And
you
I think-
believe that
We're understand that we are only about 4 minutes into this interview. And quite honestly, I really don't even have to go any further for you to see that this is not going very well. To claim Kamala was an Indian heritage, and then all of a sudden she just suddenly turned black. Oh my God. Like, what was he thinking? Where does he think that this is going?
I
she
think
is
somebody should look into that too when you ask continue in a very hostile, nasty tone.
it's a direct question, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is a deep
Wait a minute,
she went to a
wait a
historically black college?
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person.
Just to be clear, sir, do
And
you
I
believe
think,
that
I think
she is
somebody should look into that too when you ask continue in a very hostile, nasty tone.
it's a direct question, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is a DEI hire, as some
I really
Republicans have
don't
said?
know. I mean, I really don't know. Could be. There are some, and there are plenty. I know this lady right over there, Harris, is a fantastic person who just interviewed me at length, and we had a great interview, I think, and I heard you got very good ratings.
Now he's talking about the one far on the right who's with Fox News. Now, as much as he hates on Fox News, he is cuddling up with her on the stage because he knows she's the right wing part of the questions on the stage. Even though she asks some pretty good questions, but he continuously addressed it, and even several times specifically, would answer a question and state her name, even though she didn't ask the question. Or he would, somewhere in his answer, he would just say, Harris, blah, 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 talking directly to her. And he's talking about an interview that they had. She apparently interviewed him. I saw somewhere where she apparently interviewed him right after the assassination attempt. She was one of his first big interviews, I guess, and she did with him. I think even spent maybe it was the day of or the day after, one or the other, interviewing him about that. So that's the interview he's talking about.
Well, you told me it was the longest one of your life, so we had a good discussion. Look, I want to talk about why you're here today. I mean, it is not lost on us how divided we are as a country. And as you were coming today, we really got to see that we are divided along the lines of race, along the lines of gender. And there is this question of, in this moment where we are, why come here? What is your message today?
My message is to stop people from invading our country that
It's a
are
very
taking,
soft
frankly,
question, but
a
that
lot of
one was-
problems with it. But one of the big
but
problems, and a lot of
a
the
general question that-
journalists in this room I know and I have great respect for, a lot of the journalists in this room are black.
And as you were coming today, we really got to see that we are divided along the lines of race, along the lines of gender. And there is this question of, in this moment where we are, why come here? What is your message today?
My message is to stop people from invading our country that are taking, frankly, a lot of problems with it. But one of the big problems, and a lot of the journalists in this room I know and I have great respect for, a lot of the journalists in this room are black. I will tell you that coming from the border are millions and millions of people.
Why did that even have to be said? It's literally the National Association of Black Journalists. I'm willing to bet that every one of them in there are black. I mean, I guess potentially there might be a handful that might not be. Maybe I don't know, but I I mean I'm sure. Maybe who knows? Maybe I guess, but I'm almost willing to bet they all are. I don't know why that needed to be said though. It just seems so weird to be said there.
That happened to be taking black jobs. You had the best.
What exactly is a black job, sir?
A black job is anybody that has a job. That's what it is. Anybody that has
Anybody that has
right.
a job is a black
and
job.
they're taking the employment away from black people. They're coming in, they're invading. It's an invasion of millions of people, probably 15, 16, 17 million people. I have a feeling it's much more than that. And everybody's been seeing what's happened. The first group of people, the black population, is affected most by that. And Kamala is allowing it to happen. She's the border czar. She's the worst border czar in the history of the world. There's never been a border czar like this. She's never even essentially been. She said she was there once, but not the right part of the border. So she was a border czar. She's done a horrible job. These people are coming into our country, and they're taking black jobs and Hispanic jobs. And frankly, they're taking union jobs. Unions are being very badly affected by all of the millions of people that are pouring into our country. And one thing, as we discussed, many of these people are coming in from mental institutions, from prisons, from jails, they're gang members in other countries.
And
other countries are setting loose their prisoners, they're opening up their prisons and their mental institutions, and they're taking their bad people, drug dealers, gang members, and they're bringing them into the United States. And by the way,
he gets all this. I can't remember who it was that I was watching, but they brought up a really good point that even I hadn't thought of. And it's, you know, that these people are coming over seeking asylum, right? Like that's the term, asylum. And I can't remember who it is, but they argued that what he very well could be associating, and the reason why he's constantly talking about that they're sending people from, you know, their prisons, they're crazy people that are, you know, mentally unstable and all these kinds of things, drugs, whatever, is that he is associating the seeking of asylum, you know, safety into our country from a situation that's unsafe, right? With what at one point would have been called like asylums, like, you know, insane asylums where, you know, people with psychotic issues or whatever, or testing or whatever, you know, whatever can, you know, was, you know, that's an old term, but like he's combining those as the same thing, and he's thinking that when it said people are coming over seeking asylum, that means that they come from an asylum wherever they were from, meaning that they have mental issues, drug issues, and all these type of different things, and that's just not what that means. And I honestly, I hadn't really even thought of it that way, because, you know, it's like, well, how are they, you know, where is he coming up with all this kind of stuff, this rhetoric that he's just constantly spewing out? And so it was a very interesting when I heard that's something that's very possible. What he's associating is those two things, and they don't have anything to do with each other. So anyways, that come up in my mind when he's saying that, and I wanted to share that with you. Let me know what you think on that. Do you think that that's an actual like possibility, or does he really know what he's talking about and he's just doing it on purpose, or whatever?
Their crime rate is going down, and our crime rate is going to be a disaster.
Mr. President, I want to get...
Our crime rate has went down. We did have a spike at one point, but it is going down. So
into how you address some of the issues with black communities. And I say that plural because we live in communities of color that are different. We're not all the same. We don't vote the same. We don't think the same.
True.
It's not monolithic. So as you come here today, I want to talk about something that bursts, and this is the weight of the inflation on this country right now. The nonprofit Money Management International recently released data from its mid-year analysis that we have found a 52% rise in people who are seeking counseling for being in credit debt. They're paying for food that is sky high on their credit cards, and now they can't pay that off. The credit counseling nonprofit MMI, as I said, is saying now that they've seen surges that they haven't seen since we were in a pandemic of people in financial trouble. Much of that falls on the shoulders of single moms, single black moms, when you look statistically.
Yeah.
How do you turn it around? What's your plan for the black community when it comes to money?
So, first of all, it's very hard to hear you for whatever reason because of the fact that they have bad equipment, because I guess, you know, this woman was unable to get the right equipment.
another
but it's very
attack.
hard for me to
This
hear
is
you, but I
another
can hear
attack
every
where he
other word.
attacks her
It's
for no
very
reason.
difficult, actually.
I mean, if the place has a issue with the equipment, that's not her fault. She didn't have anything to do with that, but he's blaming her for it.
So I don't know if they can fix it or do something with it, but I'll do the best I can with it.
He's constantly jabbing at her throughout the entire interview.
The inflation.
And then he doesn't even answer the question. They turn around and have to ask him because he just talks about inflation in general and doesn't actually talk about how he's going to help black single mothers and stuff.
Inflation is absolutely destroying our middle class, our working class, virtually every class. Inflation is a disaster in our country. Inflation
Math
is a
class,
country buster.
science class.
It breaks every country. And we had, in my opinion, the worst inflation we've had. They say it's 58 years, but I think it's much more than that. It's been devastating.
Everything is always much more than what they say. He's so hyperbolic. He just flamboyantly expands everything. It's so annoying. Trying to make everything seem, mountains out of molehill kind of, argument.
And if you just take a look at a lot of things they don't include, like interest rates. Interest rates went from 2.4% to 10%, and you can't get the money. People can't buy houses. They no longer have.
That was the Federal
American
Reserve.
dream. Young people, young black
I don't
people,
agree with it.
They don't
I
have
think
the
it's a
American
stupid
dream
way to
anymore.
try to
They can't
control
buy a
inflation,
house. They can't
but-
borrow the money because of the cost of the money. They can't buy because of the cost of housing, because of the cost to build it, because of inflation. Inflation is a disaster, and it's destroying our country, and it's destroying the black community probably as much or
So what do
more
you do?
than any.
What's your plan?
You know what we have to do? We have to bring down the cost of energy, and that's going to bring down the cost of inflation. This was all started with a bad energy policy by Joe Biden. By the way,
Here again, she's softballing him, leaning him into answering the question, and he still doesn't answer the question. He goes off on this tangent about Joe Biden and about him just suddenly not being in the race anymore. Like he switches over to the election and still doesn't actually answer the question.
just if I might, I was running against a man named Biden. You probably saw that. And he was losing very badly in the polls, and then he had a rather bad debate. I would say it was a bad debate. I would say it was one of the worst debates in history. And his poll numbers crashed.
Possibly,
And
yeah.
instead of saying, let's keep going and maybe something happens the other way, they said, oh, we're going to replace him. Let's just replace him. That's like you're in a fight, a prize fighter's in a fight. He's not doing well. You say, let's bring in another fighter. So our whole campaign was steered toward him, and now we have to steer it toward him. But ultimately, it's the same because they have bad policy. They have policies.
So you understand that he's complaining. This has been an argument. He's complaining that we were set up to do Biden, and now we got to reset everything to do Kamala. But then he turns around and says, but they're the same. They do the same thing, so we're ready. Like, what is it? Do you have to reset your whole, like, approach? Or is it the exact same, and which means you should be able to flow perfectly fine and not have a problem, not skip a beat? I mean, why are you claiming that you're not even going to do a debate just because it changed? A person, if they're the exact same, then the debate should be the exact same. You should be fine. You shouldn't be skipping a beat. It's just it's contradiction within the same sentence.
Of open borders, unbelievable open borders, horrible energy policies. They want to get rid of, as you say, gasoline in cars. They want to get rid of oil. They want to get rid of efficient heating.
Mr. President.
Environmentally, what they're doing is killing our country. They're absolutely destroying our country. But the inflation is the thing that's hurting the black worker, the black population, and every other population within our country. Inflation is the worst it's been, I think, in over 100 years. And they'll fact check it. They'll say it's only 58. Whatever it may be, they don't add all the numbers. They don't add the really bad numbers, and you can check that too. But inflation, Harris, is absolutely destroying this country and the people in our country. Yes,
Mr. President, can I ask you another question?
Yes.
So he still straight up didn't answer the question. Didn't say how he's going to fix it at all.
That is also impacting black Americans.
And that's very clear now. Good.
I'm sorry?
It's very clear. I hear you.
Okay. So Sonia Massey, someone from Illinois, an unarmed black woman, was shot the other day in her home by a deputy sheriff. The deputy has since been charged with murder. You've said police would get immunity from prosecution if you win. Why should someone like that officer have immunity, in your opinion?
Immunity?
Immunity.
I don't know the exact case, but I saw something, and it didn't look good to me. It didn't look good to me. Are you talking with the water, right?
Yeah, well, police unions are not backing this person either.
Okay.
But again, why would...
They're going to be charging the officer. I guess they're charging the officer.
So why should he receive immunity?
Well, he might not. I mean, it depends. It depends on what happens. I'm talking
She seemed a
about people
little
that
bit
are
like
in much different cases than that.
nervous or
We need people to
something,
protect
asking questions
ourselves.
to
And
him. Like she
by
didn't.
the way, in Chicago, as an
I mean, she did
example,
okay, but
a few weeks ago, July 4th weekend, they had 117 shootings and 17 deaths. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. We need to have our police officers have the respect and dignity back. In this particular case, I saw something that didn't look good to me. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all.
So can you get a little more specific back to the immunity question? Who would make those
Well, right now,
distinctions?
for the most part, people are protected by their unions, by their police unions, or by their police departments. But I'm saying if I felt, or if a group of people would feel that somebody was being unfairly prosecuted because the person did a good job maybe with crime, or made a mistake, an innocent mistake. There's a big difference between being a bad person and making an innocent mistake. But if somebody made an innocent mistake, I would want to help that person.
What would those exceptions be? What would determine
You
an
go
innocent
after
mistake?
somebody and it's a very close call and it's very dangerous. And you know, they have, the policeman's life and woman is a very difficult thing because sometimes you have less than a second to make a life and death decision, and sometimes very bad decisions are made. They're not made from an evil standpoint, but they're made from the standpoint of they made a mistake.
So I want to follow up really quickly.
Okay, so here's the thing. This was an immunity question. He has stated before that under him, he is going to basically give cops immunity from being charged with. The way it come across was like with anything. And she was simply asking, in this case where a sheriff deputy or whatever shot and killed an elderly woman, no threat at all. The police union isn't even backing up this cop. and it looks like he will certainly be, he's been charged with murder, and he's going to, the justice system is doing its job. But what she's arguing is that if this happened under him, and he stated that he was going to give immunity, she's asking, why would this be considered okay for immunity? And his argument is that, well, we have to look at it. It's like it's on a case by case kind of thing. That's not how immunity works. It has to be either across the board or not at all. You can't pick and choose who you're going to give immunity to. You can't say, well, this cop gets immunity, but this cop doesn't. That's just not how it works. It has to be either across the board, all cops get immunity, or they don't. They go through the justice system just like this. So it's a twisted up thing that he isn't quite being clear on. And I don't think he even really understands himself, what he's actually talking about. And when given a scenario like that, he doesn't know how to answer it, because he knows if he says, well, yes, then that just sounds completely insane. So he backpedals, even though he has previously said a statement that he would give immunity to cops.
I find it interesting because you do talk about.
And I know I said I was only going to do part of this. I don't know how much further I'm going to go, but we're going to go a little bit further.
About reining in prosecutors, especially when it comes to prosecutors that are prosecuting you. Why doesn't that skepticism apply to law enforcement?
Well, I've been prosecuted because I'm a political opponent of two people that have weaponized our justice system. I've been prosecuted. I just won the big case in Florida. Everyone said that was the biggest case. That was the most difficult.
He did not win that case. That case got dismissed. That isn't you winning. That's you getting away with it. I mean, to him, I guess that's winning, but technically, no, he didn't win the case. It was dismissed by a Trump-supporting judge at that. So, anyway.
Difficult case, and I just won it. Now, Biden has a similar case, except much worse. I was protected under the Presidential Records Act.
No, he wasn't.
Biden wasn't, because he wasn't president at the time, and he had 50 years worth of documents, and they ruled that he was incompetent, and therefore he shouldn't stand trial. And I said, isn't that something? He's incompetent and he can't stand trial, and yet he can be president. Isn't that nice?
Mr. President,
but they released him on the basis that he was incompetent. They said he had no memory, and he was a nice old guy, but he had no memory, and therefore we're not going to prosecute him.
He's, of course, turning that into a joke. But the reality of it is, Joe Biden gave all of it back. It's once they realized that he had it, he claimed he didn't know. And, whatever. It doesn't really matter if he did or not. Once they asked for it, he gave it back. Simple as that. He gave it back. Where Trump kept holding on and kept holding on, kept lying and kept lying and kept pushing it off, would give them a little bit here and be like, oh, that's all of it, that's all of it. And then they would find more, and they would find more, and they would find more, and he was trying to hide them, and this, that. That's the difference. That's the difference. Biden didn't make a big deal about it. He gave it back to him. Clear, simple, out. The reason why Trump was being put on is because he tried to hold him. He tried to restrain him. He tried to pretend, and he lied, saying that he didn't have any more when he did, over and over again, 3 and 4 times, hiding them in all kinds of different rooms, trying to keep them from being found. It's a huge difference. A huge difference. And he was not immune.
I won the case, and it got very little publicity. I didn't notice ABC doing any publicity on it, George.
We cover you extensively, sir. I'd love to move over on.
Again, poked at her.
I didn't notice you do any publicity on it at all. I won the case, the biggest case. This is an attack on a political opponent. I have another one where I have a hostile judge.
We have you for a limited time, sir. I'd love to move on to different topics.
No, excuse you. You're the one that held me up for 35 minutes, just so you understand.
See?
If we can move on now to the state of the race, sir, I want to get back to the campaign. Senator J.D. Vance is your running mate. He's had a lot of controversy lately, and I want to read you a few things that he has said in the past. He said the Democrats running the country are a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. He's not talking here about how great it is to be a parent. He's attacking what he says are the choices people are making to not have children. Did you know that he had these views about people who do not have children before you picked him to be your running mate, and do you agree with him?
No, I know this. He is very family-oriented, and he thinks family is a great thing. That doesn't mean he thinks that if you don't have a family, it's not. I know people with families. I know people with great families. I know people with very troubled families. And I also know people with no families. They didn't meet the right person. Things happen. You go through life, you don't meet the right person.
But he's not just talking about families here. He also says that people that don't have children should get less votes than those that do.
I'm just speaking for myself.
Is that your campaign
I think
position?
I'm speaking for him too. He strongly believes in family. But I know people with great families. I know people with not great families that don't have a family. And the people without the family are far better. They're superior in many cases, okay? He's not saying they're not. What he's saying is that he thinks the family experience is a very important thing. It's a very good thing. But that doesn't mean that if you grow up and you grow older and you don't meet somebody that would be wonderful to meet and would have been good, that's a bad thing. He's not saying that. My interpretation, you'll have to ask him, actually, but my interpretation is he's strongly family-oriented, but that doesn't mean if you don't have a family, there's something wrong with it.
Just one last point, and then we'll move on. Just one of the bedrock principles of American life is one person, one vote. Senator J.D. Vance has suggested that someone who has children should have more votes than a person who does not have children. I just want to be clear here. Is that the position of your campaign?
Well, no, but it's not something I have ever heard before. I can tell you this. Right now you have illegal aliens coming into our country, many from prisons and many from mental institutions, and they want to give them votes. I don't think they should have votes. They came into our country illegally, and they're taking the vote away from all of the people in this room that have been here a long time.
As she brings up, he segued that because he thinks that we're giving illegal aliens the ability to vote, and that's just not happening. The only people that can vote are legal citizens. Period. If you think otherwise, you don't know what you're talking about. Simple as that. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
That have worked hard, that in many cases, and you'll see this happening, if I'm not elected, you're going to see it happening. If I am, you're not going to have any problem. But you're going to see it happening a long time. You're going to see the people in this room and people outside of this room are going to be losing their jobs to people that have come into this country illegally.
Mr. President, can we stay with just kind of the state of the race right now? Because I felt like that Vice President question.
You know, he's made himself
to go to. You said some.
Who's out? I don't think. Look, but the Republicans, they're doing people to vote, execute the baby.
Can I?
That's a radical, horrible position. Let's call it a baby after the baby is born.
I'm going to get my J.D. Vance question in. To your point and to Rachel's point, he, has a lot of opinions about childless women like myself or divorced people like yourself. Do you think? Well, I mean, my point is here.
But at least it was said in a friendly manner.
My point is.
That was another jab at the other lady. I'm telling you, it was continuous. It was continuous.
Do you think the Republican Party is getting a little bit too judgy about people's lives when you think about abortion or when you think about what J.D. Vance is saying?
I don't think, look, I think that the Democrat Party.
Because J.D. Vance apparently has made the claims about, he believes in like maybe not a full blown out like federal ban, but certainly some pretty heavy restrictions.
Is really the one that has the problem. I think they're radical on abortion because they're allowing abortion in the 9th month. They're allowing the
But I
death.
think it's
They're
about
allowing
freedom,
the death
right?
of a baby after the baby is born, based on
Sir,
the
that
governor
is
of
illegal in
Virginia.
every state
That's-
in the
that's
country.
Based on the governor of Virginia,
Executing a
they're
baby in
allowing the
every
death
state
of
in
the
the country
baby
is illegal.
after it's born.
It's
They're
a
allowing
crime.
abortions in the 8th and 9th month. of
Well, Democrats
pregnancy.
have denied
I think they're right, and I
that's
think
a
the
thing.
Republican Party is actually much lesser. I think
That argument is always gonna fail. With his base, sure, because they're brainwashed to think it. But it's like they pointed out, it's illegal. Nobody is doing it after. Nobody. I mean, the only way I can see how he's arguing that is for some reason there's a baby is born with a condition that, where they're gonna die, like fairly quickly. And to keep the baby from struggling, maybe it's born premature, well, whatever. And so they might medically, end it or whatever because of whatever that is to keep the baby from suffering. That probably has happened. I would see where that could happen, but it's not some instance where there's a perfectly healthy baby and they just go, well, no, I've decided I don't want this baby, and we're just going to eliminate it. That's illegal. That doesn't happen. There has to be a medical reason, and that was always the case. Even with Roe v. Wade, even if it's a late term abortion, it had to be a medical reason for it, where the life of the mother or the child was at risk. And usually it was both, where some kind of late term abortion was happening in the 8th, 9th month or whatever. There was a risk issue to the mother and the baby or whatever for that to have happened. It wasn't like you have mothers just decidedly, oh, I don't want to have this baby, and the doctor's like, okay, let's get rid of it. That's not happening. Okay. Just like the argument that Roe v. Wade, that they removed Roe v. Wade to give the argument back to the states, to give the decision back to the states. Even with Roe v. Wade, the decision was with the states. It was just with the states after a certain point. Before a certain point, it was regulated federally to protect people from extreme states. That's all it was. It was just a balance. That's what Roe v. Wade was a balance between extreme states trying to ban completely the right to an abortion, which they knew was on the board. I mean, we've seen it since, and still on the board, even federally for some. All it did, though, was regulate basically around 21, 22 weeks. After that, it was completely up to the states. So the argument that it wasn't in states' hands is just BS. It's just complete bullshit. It was. Roe v. Wade gave it to the states after a certain time. And those first, before that, was just a protection for extreme states. And it was the most popular thing. It was the most popular, one of the most popular decisions in our history. And removal of Roe v. Wade has been the most unpopular decisions. Now, he argues that everybody wanted it. Everybody wanted Roe to go away. No, just your base. Just your 20% of people. Of his people, not of the whole country. it's, I get so frustrated with that argument, and I've been meaning to do a video on abortion, but I just hadn't done it. But yeah, so he makes one more really bad jab at her later on that actually really annoys her. I can't remember where.
Here, I
In
think
fact,
he must work for
Mr.
her.
President.
Joe and I will go and take a cognitive test. Now, I'd do it with her too. I would do it with her also. You know what? She failed her law exam. She didn't pass her law exam, so maybe she wouldn't pass the cognitive test.
Mr. President,
Are you saying she wouldn't pass? Just to be clear,
I'm just giving you the facts.
to be clear, you don't think
I'm
Harris
just
would
how do
pass?
you
giving the
intend,
facts. She
and
didn't
look,
pass her bar exam, and she didn't think she would pass it, and she didn't think she was going to ever pass it. And I don't know what happened. Maybe she passed it.
She did pass it.
There's a
She
man
did-
over
she
here. I
did in
think
fact pass
he
it.
must work for
Mr.
her.
President, I would love to ask you about January 6th. You've called yourself the candidate of law and order.
Attack on the Capitol.
About
How
people
come
that
the
were
people-
seen
no,
beating
We're
officers
talking
with
about federal
flagpoles,
buildings.
dragging them down the stairs. They're on video. Have you seen that
Really?
video,
Oh,
sir?
really? Well, they
you would
shot-
pardon those. You would pardon those rioters?
They shot a young lady in the face who was spraying and happened in our country by a handbills around the car, taking your job. Come in, win without. What about
I
very
can't
tough
find it. I wish I
surrender?
could find it. I don't know
We
where it
haven't
is.
in some way. I think I'd know. Look,
We see you golfing all the time.
said people to now I much less want to
That you're the
Sir,
question.
actually.
You.
absolutely.
And who would
I
make,
think I'd know.
How would you make that decision?
I think I'd know. Look, if I came onto a stage like this and I got treated so rudely as this woman treated
oh my
me,
goodness.
and I'm fine with it because she was very rude, sir. Very rude. That was a nasty.
said,
That wasn't a question.
at this
she
point-
didn't
You
ask
can
me a
answer the
question.
question.
She gave
At
us
this point, he's basically lost the whole place, the majority of the place, and he just keeps attacking her. And even who said, "Oh my goodness, that almost sounds like Harris." That didn't really even sound like Rachel that made that comment.
shape some of our greatest leaders. You look at throughout the world history, the greatest leaders, some of the greatest leaders in the world were in their 80s.
But here's the question. Would you consider stepping down if you felt that your health was declining? Or would you?
Oh, absolutely.
And who would
I
make,
think I'd know.
How would you make that decision?
I think I'd know. Look, if I came onto a stage like this and I got treated so rudely as this woman treated
Oh my
me,
goodness.
and I'm fine with it because she was very rude, sir. Very rude. That was a nasty, that wasn't a question. She
Sir,
didn't
if you
ask
can
me a
answer the
question.
question.
She gave a statement. That wasn't a question.
I
Sir, if
repeated
you
your
can answer the
statement, sir,
question.
actually.
You said you would. You would
Oh,
make that
absolutely.
decision
If
to
I
step
thought
down.
that I was failing in some way, I want people to be sharp. I'll go a step further. I want anybody running for president to take an aptitude test, to take a cognitive test. I think it's a great idea. And I took 2 of them and I aced them.
Well, can
got
I
'em.
just-
I took 2 of them. But let me ask you.
Yeah.
I would like to have people running for president, and I don't mean because they're 75 or 85. I think anybody running, I'd like to do it. People say it's not constitutional. I would like to have something passed where you can do it. I think we should know. I mean, I've watched what's happened in the last couple of years under this.
Anyway, you get the point. Like I said, he had at this point had completely seemed to have lost the group, and it was really the just constant jabbing at the ABC journalist over and over and over again, just little bitty pokes and jabs at her. That was just unnecessary. Like I said, if he would have cut it off early and just let it be, then it probably wouldn't have been so bad. He could have got through, answered the questions, if he actually answered the questions. But it just continuously, he turned where he had, at least a portion of the audience at first. By the time it was over, he pretty much had lost everybody. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. And there's going to be, I'm interested to see this kind of act, along with, the boost and stuff that Kamala has had here in the past week. and her attacks on him and everything. We're already seeing a change in the polls where she's actually starting to hit more, it's starting to be a little bit more 50-50 in most polls. And then in some places, she's actually starting to flip key states in some polls. There's been some arguing that it's not going to get any, like, there's not going to be much change anymore. Like, what changes happen is going to happen. I don't completely agree with that. If he continues to do stuff like this, if she continues to do what she's doing, if I believe he will come around to a debate, but there's so much momentum going now. There very well could be a big flip here in the polls in the coming weeks, because I don't see any way possible for him to go up anymore. Like, he's at his peak. What's being shown in the polls for him is what's in the polls for him. Kamala can either just keep soaring up, or something happen and she just fall off a cliff. One or the other. I don't feel that she has hit a peak yet. For better or for worse, whatever. But this was horrible. This was bad for him. This is one of the worst interviews I think he's ever done. I don't even think it's a question. And this is nothing really good is going to come out of this at all. I mean, yeah, some of his base probably loved some of his answers, but the constant attacking on the ABC, journalist, and his, bantering even back and forth with some audience members was, it just did not go over well at all. So anyways, and I don't think it's going to bode well for him going forward. I think this is going to be one thing that they look back and go, damn, we wish we wouldn't have done that. And especially if they actually do get Kamala on, and she has an excellent, and I feel like she'd come on here, answer questions, and probably had a really good time with all of them. Say what you will. And like I said, I'm not complete, I'm not like some kind of hardcore, she certainly has flaws. But it ain't looking good for old Trump, not from this. Anyway, let me know what you think. And do you see what I'm saying? Do you think it went well? He tweeted after this that he thought it went well, and it was great. I don't know how you could think that. But do you think it went great? Do you think that was reasonable? Do you think his attacks were reasonable? Do you think his immediate reaction to the very first question was reasonable? Do you think she actually was overly aggressive or rude? I didn't see it. But anyways, thank you very much for joining, and until next time. I know this has been a long video. This is a long one, and I went way further than I planned to, but I wanted you to really get a good feel for this one. When I was watching it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I can't believe this is how this is going down. Anyways, thank you very much. Subscribe if you like this content. Like, share. Like I said, let me know what you think. Until next time, peace. Clear Talk.